My name is Alexandra Monroe, though most people just call me Alex. Except, of course, my own family, who haven't said my name out loud in over 6 years. I'm 38, a soldier, a daughter, a ghost at my sister's wedding. I wasn't supposed to be there. In fact, I was explicitly erased from it. The invitation they sent me months ago had arrived in a gold-trimmed envelope like everything else in their world. Elegant, curated, empty. My name was neatly printed on the front. But when I opened it, the words, "Your presence is not required," were scribbled in red ink across the RSVP. Handwritten, deliberate. And under it, in cursive, "Don't cause a scene, Alex." So naturally, I showed up. Not through the back, not quietly. I walked up the circular driveway of the Monroe estate in full view of every guest already arriving. Crisp suits, pastel dresses, champagne flutes tilted mid-sip. And there I stood, outside the grand front gate, staring into the world I once belonged to. A security guard stepped forward. Square jaw, pressed collar, earpiece in place. He didn't ask for my name, just looked at me and said, flat as stone, "You're not on the list." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the very invitation they sent me, and held it up. The red ink slashed across my name glared under the sunlight. I let him look. "I know," I said. "That's the point." Then I unbuttoned my long black coat, slowly, carefully. The fabric peeled away, like the final curtain, at a show that had run too long. And there it was. Beneath the coat, my dress uniform, pressed, gleaming. 4 silver stars on my shoulders, catching the light of the Hampton sun. Gasps rippled through the garden. I could feel the silence bend under the weight of who I'd become. 6 years ago, they called me a traitor. They stripped my rank, my name, my dignity. My own mother went on national television and said I had shamed the family. My little sister, Lily, cried crocodile tears on a morning talk show and told America she no longer had a sibling. And yet here I stood, not broken, not crawling back. I didn't come for cake or champagne or a seat at their table. I came to end something, to bury what they thought they'd killed, to return the silence they gave me, with truth they couldn't ignore. So I stood tall, 4 stars on my shoulders, eyes ahead, and said nothing at all, because I didn't have to. They saw me now, and that was only the beginning. The air smelled like roses and wealth, overripe peonies spilling out of glass vases, linen suits brushing against marble railings, and string quartets rehearsing behind tall hedges. It was the kind of wedding that ended up in magazines, complete with a drone overhead, and a guest list curated like an awards show. And not a single soul on that list expected me to be there. But I didn't come for them. I came for the door they slammed in my face years ago. Metaphorically, yes, but today, quite literally. After the security guard stepped aside in stunned silence, I walked toward the main lawn, feeling every pair of eyes lock onto the silver stars on my shoulders. I heard gasps from a distance. A wine glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered against the stone tiles, but no one moved to stop me. They didn't know how. The Monroe estate hadn't changed much since I'd last seen it, except now it looked more like a set piece than a home. String lights wrapped around imported olive trees. White satin draped the ceremony chairs. And at the far end, under a towering floral arch, stood Lily, my little sister. The girl I once helped sneak back into the house after high school parties. The girl I used to protect with every ounce of strength I had. And the woman who watched me burn, then turned her back like she'd never known the fire. She looked radiant. Ivory lace, diamond pins in her hair, groom at her side like a come-to-life. But when her eyes found me, her mouth froze mid-smile. Her posture stiffened, and she gripped her bouquet so tightly that petals began to snap. Standing beside her was Nathan Calloway, the man she was marrying, and the man who would soon learn that lies don't stay buried forever. Near the champagne table, my mother stood in a navy silk gown. Helen Monroe, the indomitable matriarch. Her signature brooch sparkled under the sun, the same one she wore on the day she went on national television and said, "We do not condone betrayal." Alexandra no longer represents this family. She saw me, and for the first time in years, her face cracked, her glass tilted, her mouth opened, but no words came. Maybe because there were no cameras rolling this time, no publicist whispering lines, no attorney nearby to remind her which lie to stick to. "Mother," I said calmly, my voice as even as I could make it. "I came to offer my congratulations." The string quartet faltered. A photographer paused, camera still aimed, but hand frozen, mid-click. Lily turned fully now, the altar moment forgotten, her veil shifting in the wind like a flag caught between surrender and defiance. "Why are you here?" she hissed under her breath when I reached the aisle. "This isn't your place anymore." "I know," I said, but the truth never needed an invitation. And then I did it. I pulled a small black USB drive from my inner jacket pocket and held it up, not with vengeance, but with purpose. "This," I said, "is for you and your soon-to-be husband." Nathan's face paled immediately, his jaw clenched. Lily shook her head in disbelief. "You really think this changes anything?" "No," I replied. "I think you know it already has." Then I turned away from them all. The gasps followed. So did the whispers. And the silence they had used for years to erase me suddenly wasn't enough to protect them anymore. Because I was back. And I wasn't finished. They buried me long before the uniform was folded. Long before the disgraceful headlines or the discharge papers. My family didn't wait for an investigation or a second opinion. The moment the story broke, they let it swallow me whole. I remember watching it unfold like an out-of-body experience. The accusation came fast. An alleged breach of classified intelligence linked to a foreign contact. A digital trail pointing to my credentials. An IP address logged during an overseas operation. The press ran with it before the ink dried. Decorated officer accused of espionage. Golden daughter turned national threat. It made for good TV. My mother, Helen, didn't hesitate. She held a press conference. Her voice was firm, her expression tight, her earrings tasteful. "Our family is devastated. We believe in honor, and Alexandra's actions are her own. We will not protect betrayal." My sister, Lily, my baby sister, took it further. She sat under studio lights in a snow-white blouse, wiping away carefully timed tears, and said, "I don't speak to my sister anymore. That person isn't who we are." I watched it all from a cold metal bench outside the courtroom at Fort Belvoir. My fingers clenched around a styrofoam coffee cup I didn't even drink from. When the court-martial handed down its decision, dishonorable discharge, no appeal. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I simply nodded. Because what do you say when the people you would have died for pretend you never existed? I disappeared after that. I took the last of my savings, packed my duffel, and drove west until the road blurred into numbness. I ended up in the kind of place no one asks questions. I rented a room above a repair shop and spent my days fixing carburetors and pretending the past hadn't happened. I didn't look in mirrors. I didn't wear my hair up anymore. I stopped using my last name. For almost 2 years, I was just Lex. Grease-stained hands, borrowed boots, long sleeves, even in the summer. I wasn't trying to start over, I was trying to vanish. And then, one afternoon, everything changed. I was crouched beside a Honda engine, fighting with a stripped bolt, when I heard boots. Not just any boots, military boots, the kind that carry purpose. I didn't look up right away. Thought it was a hallucination, but the shadow didn't move. "Still hiding?" a deep voice said. I stood slowly. Colonel Mitchell Hayes, my former CO, my mentor, the man who once told me I had more grit than most of his platoon combined. "You look like hell," he said. His tone wasn't cruel, it was honest. I shrugged. "Fitting, don't you think?" "I never believed the charges," he said simply. "Neither did a few others. And I've got something that needs your skill set." He handed me a folder. black, unmarked. Inside were profiles, mission objectives, coordinates, a black ops task force operating outside the official chain of command. No names, no uniforms, no safety nets. "I'm not a soldier anymore," I said. "No," he replied, "but you're still the best." I didn't answer him that day. But that night, after closing up shop, I turned on the old TV in the garage. There she was. Lily, all smiles at a fashion gala, wearing a camouflage-inspired silk gown, introduced as a style icon raised in a proud military family. I stared at the screen, at the way she used my past like a badge while I sat in oil-stained coveralls. And in that moment, I stopped hiding. I said yes. My first mission came 2 weeks after I said yes. Syria, desert heat that clung to your lungs like ash. Our task: extract a compromised asset from an enemy compound near Raqqa. Minimal footprint, zero recognition. We went in under cover of night. A 4-person team with silent comms and eyes sharper than drones. They told us the target was a low-level informant. They were wrong. The man we pulled from that bunker was Dr. Elias Rowan, a defense contractor who had been developing secure satellite systems for the Department of Defense. A name I'd seen once on a highly classified list that I should never have had access to again. As we moved him out, bleeding but lucid, he slipped a small USB drive into my glove. "If I don't make it," he rasped. "Oh, this can't disappear." He did make it, but it didn't matter. Because when I plugged that USB into our encrypted terminal, back at the hidden base in Jordan, the first folder on the drive stopped me cold. Callaway Systems, Gulf Network Access, Internal Routing Codes. I knew that name. Everyone in D.C. did. It was Nathan Callaway's company, my sister's fiancé, the tech golden boy with a Harvard degree and a string of government contracts. But the files said otherwise. They mapped a pipeline of shell corporations and encrypted offshore transactions. Transfers routed through Dubai, Belize, the Cayman Islands, funneling American defense money into foreign hands. And in that moment, everything shifted. I hadn't just been collateral damage. I had been set up. I started tracing backwards. Nights off mission, I dug through old intel files. I broke into my own redacted court-martial records, pieced together timelines, metadata, unarchived logs. I remembered something. An error during a routine data handoff. A private named Marcus Vance had input the wrong clearance code that was later traced back to me. At the time, it was chalked up to clerical mistake. Weeks later, Vance disappeared. Transferred. Gone without a trace. Now, his name showed up again. In a low-res image inside a Callaway Systems internal directory, standing next to Nathan. Title: Director of Special Operations. My breath caught. My mouth went dry. The man whose mistake destroyed my life wasn't gone. He was employed, elevated, rewarded, by the same man about to marry my sister. I took it to Julian Reed, my old teammate, and one of the few people who hadn't turned his back when the scandal hit. He was a lieutenant now, working in counterintelligence. When I showed him what I found, he went pale. "I've seen some of this," he whispered, "but not all of it together like this." A few days later, he showed up again, this time with a flash drive. "I kept this." Back then, I didn't know what it meant. But now, he plugged it in. A grainy video filled the screen, inside a field tent, 6 years ago. Marcus Vance, hunched over a table, speaking into a headset. "Dua got the payment from Callaway. 200 grand. She'll take the fall." The higher-ups signed off. My lungs locked. My hands went numb. I played it again. Then again. They bought my silence. They sold my name. And my family, my own mother, my sister. They didn't just abandon me. They chose not to know. That night, I sat in the base's dark communications center, staring at the blinking cursor on my secure terminal. A message came in. From Colonel Hayes. "It's done. They've approved your promotion. O10. "Congratulations, General." I stared at the screen. My name, my rank, my life reclaimed. But beside it was something else. A cream-colored envelope, forwarded from an address I hadn't used in years. Inside, a wedding invitation, gold trim, elegant script, and my name, Alexandra Monroe, crossed out in red ink. Again. Below it, in my sister's handwriting, no need to come. I looked down at the 4 stars freshly sewn onto my shoulder board. They still didn't know who they were dealing with. The Hamptons air was too sweet, too manicured, the kind of air that came from money and inherited silence. I stepped out of the government SUV 2 blocks from the Monroe estate, not because I needed the walk, but because I wanted the time, to feel the weight of what I was about to do, to remember that this wasn't revenge, it was revelation. I wore my dress uniform, without a coat this time, polished boots, braided regulation hair, 4 silver stars on my shoulders gleaming in the late afternoon light. Every thread on my uniform spoke louder than words ever could. As I approached the estate gates, the guards, different ones now, froze. They didn't check a list. They didn't ask a question. They just stepped aside. The ceremony had begun. Guests lined the aisle, sipping champagne, whispering in perfect tones. A string quartet played something soulless and expensive. Lily stood at the altar, in lace and illusion. Nathan beside her, flawless smile in place. But that smile vanished when he saw me. So did the music. I walked straight down the center aisle. My boots echoed louder than the violins ever did. Gasps, murmurs, no one dared move. A woman dropped her glass near the dessert table, the crash ringing out like a warning shot. Near the champagne fountain, my mother looked like someone had just whispered that the past had come back in uniform. She didn't speak, just stared. Lily's hands trembled. Nathan's jaw tightened. I smiled at the nearest stranger and said, "Lovely weather for a wedding." Then I turned to the altar, looked my sister in the eye, and pulled the USB from my pocket. "I have a gift," I said, "for the bride and groom." Nathan went pale. Lily stepped back. "This drive contains audio and financial records tying your company to international laundering, falsified charges, and the bribery that took my career." Lily's voice cracked. "Don't believe her. She's unstable. She always was." I tilted my head. "Is that what Nathan told you before or after he emailed me an apology for framing me?" Phones rose. Guests filmed. Some stared. Others stepped away, unsure who to believe, and afraid it might be me. Then a tall man in a tux stepped forward. "I represent several investors in Callaway Systems. Are these claims substantiated?" Nathan didn't answer. Because that's when the sirens began. Not distant, not warning, close. 2 black SUVs peeled into the estate's circular drive. Doors burst open. FBI jackets moved like clockwork. Commands were shouted. Guests froze. Nathan tried to run. He didn't get far. 4 agents pinned him before he reached the catering tent. Lily screamed. My mother stumbled back. One of the agents walked up to me, tall and sharp-eyed. "General Monroe?" he said with a grin. "Didn't think I'd see you again. Petty Officer Langston, Black Ops." I nodded. "Good to see you too." Behind him, Nathan was handcuffed, red-faced, and defeated. I turned to the crowd. "You may continue your celebration, or not." No one spoke, no one laughed. And for the first time since they'd cast me out, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. The reception collapsed the second Nathan hit the ground in handcuffs. The music stopped. Forks froze midair. The polished surface of perfection cracked wide open. I didn't linger. I walked through the stunned crowd. Head high, shoulders squared. This wasn't vengeance, it was clarity. And for once, every eye in the room looked at me without filters, without denial. They saw what they tried to erase. Near the terrace, my mother stood still. One hand gripping her pearls, the other around a glass she hadn't sipped from. Her voice caught when I stepped closer. "I'm not here for revenge," I said calmly, "but I need you to know. I didn't vanish. You just stopped looking." She said nothing, just stared, like she couldn't decide whether to reach out or retreat. Inside, Lily was slumped near the gift table, her dress wrinkled, mascara running in slow rivers, her bare feet pressed against marble that suddenly looked too cold for celebration. "You destroyed everything," she muttered. I stopped. "No, I exposed it." Her voice cracked. "I didn't know it would get that bad for you." I met her eyes. "You didn't ask. You liked the silence. It made your life easier." I turned before she could respond. In the SUV, I opened my encrypted laptop. The folder named Redemption blinked on screen. Inside, every file, every voice, every truth. And a message from Julian. FBI confirmed. "You didn't just clear your name, you opened the door for others." 1 week later, I stood in front of a panel at the Pentagon. My record? Cleared. My rank? Restored. My name? No longer buried. They offered me the Medal of Freedom. I declined. Justice had already been served. That evening, I drove to a quiet bluff on the California coast. The wind howled like memory, but it didn't scare me anymore. I took out a box, the one holding my 4 stars, and placed it gently on the earth. Not in anger, not as a goodbye, just release. I didn't need them to see me now because I finally saw myself, and I was free.